Holy crap, it's beautiful out here. It sure is. It's something else. Yow! Woo! Man, that was great.
This first space voyage took place during the Cold War, a time when the Soviet Union and the United States were at odds politically. The two superpowers had been vying with one another for years to create intercontinental ballistic missiles, also known as ICBMs, which could transport nuclear warheads between continents. However, the US had been developing its own satellite launch capacity prior to the launch of Sputnik. But before successfully launching a rocket carrying the Explorer satellite into orbit on January 31, 1958, the US had already made two unsuccessful attempts to do so. Nevertheless, one of the most significant years in the history of the space industry was 1969. One of the most important cultural moments of 1969 was the first man's walk on the moon, which took place on July 20th. Armstrong and Lunar module pilot Buzz Aldrin made the Apollo 11 landing. In the 3 years that followed the United States' achievement in landing 2 astronauts on the moon, 10 more astronauts joined the mission. However, no one has been back to the moon since December 14, 1972. Why is it taking so long to go back to the moon when there have already been successful landings there? In today's video, we are going to show you 10 reasons why NASA never returned to the moon 50 years after the last moon landing. Among all the planets and other celestial bodies, why the moon? Number 10. The overall cost of moon-based programs is expensive. To set the ball rolling, let's talk about the cost of the Artemis program. NASA's plan to send men back to the moon by 2025 was put on hold or postponed when its Artemis 1 launch got delayed. Technical issues, computer glitches, and even hurricanes caused the Artemis 1 launch to be delayed. As a result, NASA's planned full-scale orbital test flight of its Space Launch System, SLS, was also delayed. It would be the first mission of the agency's Artemis program designed to return astronauts to the surface of the moon for the first time since Apollo 17 in 1972, and ultimately prepare the pathway for crewed missions to Mars. The Artemis program is a NASA initiative named after Artemis, the Greek goddess of the moon. The Artemis program is a major undertaking, and it will require the development of new technologies and the construction of new spacecraft. The Artemis program is a bold and ambitious goal, but it is one that NASA is not so confident that it can achieve because of budget constraints. The program has the potential to revolutionize our understanding of the moon and to inspire a new generation of explorers. The program will provide valuable experience in landing and operating on the moon, which will be essential for a future mission to Mars. The Artemis program is a symbol of American ingenuity and determination. The program will show the world that the United States is still a leader in space exploration. The Artemis program is a historic undertaking, and it is one that every astronaut would be proud to be a part of. However, NASA's Artemis program is estimated to cost a whopping $28 billion from 2021 to 2025. This includes the cost of developing the Orion spacecraft, the Space Launch System rocket, and the Gateway Lunar Space Station. It also includes the cost of sending astronauts to the moon in 2024 and 2025. However, the total cost of the Artemis program could be much higher, depending on how long it takes to develop the new technologies and how many missions are ultimately flown. Unfortunately, NASA's budget has been limited in recent years, and there may not be enough funding available to support a new moon mission. This is a serious problem, as a moon mission would be a major scientific and technological achievement. It would also be a morale boost for the country, and a sign that humans are still committed to exploring space. There are a number of reasons why NASA's budget has been limited. One reason is that the government has been focused on other priorities, such as the war on terror and the economy. Another reason is that there has been some opposition to NASA's budget from people who believe that it is too expensive. The lack of funding for NASA is a serious problem, but it is not insurmountable. There are a number of things that can be done to increase funding for NASA. One option is to increase taxes, while another option is to cut spending in other areas. Finally, it could turn out well if they also try to get private companies to invest in NASA. It is important to remember that a moon mission would be a major investment, but it would also be a major return on investment. A moon mission would help us to learn more about the universe, and it would also help us to develop new technologies that could be used here on Earth. Number 9. Risk on human life. Some happenings become a stigma that would not be easily erased from memory lane. One such sad occurrence is the burning to death of 3 astronauts on the 27th day of January, 1967. That fateful day, the Apollo 1 crew capsule experienced a flash fire, killing astronauts Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee. This unfortunate incident occurred during a launch test practice. You see, going to the moon may be fascinating. However, there are a lot of risks involved. Apart from this tragic event, the dust from the moon is known to affect humans in one way or the other. For instance, the dust that stuck to the spacesuits of the Apollo astronauts caused them to have throat pain and eye irritation after they returned from the moon. Lunar dust contains unpleasant, abrasive, and sharp particles. But do we really know how hazardous they could be to people? From records, all 12 moonwalkers have had symptoms, which NASA astronaut Harrison Schmitt referred to as lunar hay fever during the Apollo 17 mission. The dust within the spacecraft had a charred gunpowder smell, and sometimes it took days for the reactions, which ranged from sneezing to nasal congestion, to subside. Whether or not lunar dust can endanger human health is an issue left unresolved by the moon missions. The truth is, human spaceflight is inherently risky, and there are a number of potential hazards that could arise during a moon mission. Let's take radiation, for instance. The moon has no atmosphere to protect astronauts from radiation from the sun and other sources, and this radiation could cause cancer or other health problems. When the first recorded measurements of radiation levels on the moon were taken by LND lander neutron and dosimetry instrument, the amount of radiation that astronauts in a spacesuit would be subjected to per hour is estimated to be roughly 60 microsieverts. Another concern is the risk of microgravity. Microgravity is the lack of gravity in space. It can cause a number of health problems, including muscle atrophy, bone loss, and vision problems. Finally, there is the risk of accidents. Accidents can happen during any phase of spaceflight, from launch to landing. The risk of accidents is even greater for missions to the moon, which is a more difficult and dangerous environment than Earth. The decision of whether or not to send humans back to the moon is a complex one. There are many risks to consider, but there are also many potential benefits. Ultimately, the decision is up to the governments and agencies that are responsible for human spaceflight. Number 8. Environmental concerns. Talking about environmental concerns, the report shows that between 1969 and 1972, each Apollo mission produced more than 10 tons of exhaust gases that were added to the exosphere. More than 60 tons of gases were discharged on the surface of the moon over the course of 3 years. Additionally, a similar quantity was probably added by the 5 Lunar missions that brought back samples from the moon between 1970 and 1976. There are a number of environmental concerns that have been raised about the potential impact of a new moon mission. These include the potential disruption of the lunar environment, the creation of space debris, and the introduction of new species to the moon. The lunar environment is very fragile and could be easily disrupted by human activity. For example, the landing of a spacecraft could create a dust cloud that would take years to settle. This dust could then be carried by the wind and deposited on other parts of the moon, potentially contaminating them. The creation of space debris is another concern. Any spacecraft that travels to the moon will create some amount of debris, which could then collide with other spacecraft or satellites. This could create a chain reaction of collisions that could eventually render low Earth orbit unusable. Finally, there is the concern that humans could introduce new species to the moon. These species could then compete with or even harm the native lunar ecosystem. All of these concerns need to be carefully considered before any new moon mission is undertaken. Number 6. Commercial competition. Commercial competition in space exploration is a new and exciting development that will tell us a lot in a few years to come. There are many companies, including SpaceX and Blue Origin, vying to have the upper hand in space-related projects. The Space Exploration Technologies Corporation, also known as SpaceX, is a U.S.-based satellite communications, spacecraft manufacturing, and launch service provider with headquarters in Hawthorne, California. Elon Musk established the business in 2002 2022 with the intention of lowering the price of space travel and colonizing Mars. Due to a number of historic achievements, SpaceX has drawn attention from all over the world. In 2012, the Dragon spacecraft became the first commercial spaceship to transfer supplies to and from the International Space Station. It is the only private enterprise capable of returning a spacecraft from low Earth orbit. On the other hand, Blue Origin, LLC is a U.S. aerospace manufacturer, defense contractor, launch service provider, and space exploration business. The business manufactures rocket engines for the United Launch Alliance, ULA, and other customers. Jeff Bezos launched Blue Origin with the goal of having millions of people live and work in space for the benefit of Earth. In order to protect Earth, Blue Origin envisions a period when mankind will be able to access the infinite riches of space and allow the expansion of businesses there. Private companies, such as SpaceX and Blue Origin, have expressed interest in lunar exploration, and NASA may choose to work with them rather than pursue a new moon mission on its own. Although this move could delay the return to the moon, it would be a wise decision, as it would allow NASA to focus on its core mission of scientific discovery, while the private sector takes on the more challenging task of developing and operating lunar missions. There are several advantages to this approach. First, it would save NASA money. The cost of developing and operating a lunar mission is enormous, and NASA simply does not have the resources to do it alone. By partnering with private companies, NASA can share the costs and risks of lunar exploration. Second, it would accelerate the pace of progress. Private companies are often more nimble and innovative than government agencies, and they are not subject to the same bureaucratic red tape. This means that they can move more quickly to develop new technologies and capabilities. Third, it would create jobs and stimulate economic growth. The development and operation of lunar missions would create thousands of jobs in the United States. It would also create a new market for American businesses, as they would be the ones to supply the equipment and services needed for these missions. Overall, commercial competition in space exploration is a positive development. It would allow NASA to focus on its core mission, accelerate the pace of progress, and create jobs and economic growth. Number 7. The political priorities and space race. If the political priorities of any administration include a new moon mission, no one would think about visiting the moon. For instance, the administration of President John F. Kennedy included hopes for the moon missions. The United States space program was dramatically expanded by President John F. Kennedy in 1961, and he set an extremely lofty target for the country to put a man on the surface of the moon by the end of the decade. The space race began after the Soviet Union put Sputnik into orbit in 1957. The Soviet victory shocked the American public and prompted the federal government to act quickly to prevent the United States from falling behind its communist rival. 2 years later, during the presidency of Dwight D. Eisenhower, a new space program called Project Mercury was launched. Scott Carpenter, Leroy Gordon Cooper, John Glenn Jr., Virgil Gus Grissom, Walter Schirra Jr., Alan Shepard Jr., and Donald Deke Slayton were the 7 men chosen to participate in the program. The objectives of Project Mercury were to orbit a manned spaceship around the Earth, look into astronauts' abilities to function in space, and safely return personnel and spacecraft. Later, when Soviet astronaut Yuri Gagarin became the first man to orbit the Earth in 1961, the country experienced yet another shock. It appeared that the United States was still lagging behind. President Kennedy planned to not just match but surpass the Soviets because he saw the need to re-establish American trust. Consequently, he spoke before Congress on May 25, 1961, to offer a special speech on urgent national needs. And there he proclaimed that the American nation would commit itself to achieving the goal of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth before the decade was out. To this, he requested for an additional $7 billion to $9 billion over the following 5 years for the space program. But now, the political priorities of the current administration may not include a new moon mission, or there may be competing priorities for funding. This would undoubtedly have a significant impact on the future of space exploration. The current administration has made it clear that its top priorities are domestic issues, such as the economy and healthcare. This means that there may be less funding available for space exploration, which is a relatively expensive endeavor. Some officials have even suggested that it is a waste of money. This could make it difficult to get the administration to support a new moon mission. Even if the administration is supportive of space exploration, exploration, there may be other competing priorities for funding. For example, the administration has also made it a priority to increase military spending. This could mean that there is less money available for space exploration. The political priorities of the current administration could also have a significant impact on the future of space exploration. If the administration is not supportive of space exploration, or if there are competing priorities for funding, it could be difficult to get the funding necessary for a new moon mission. This could set back space exploration for years to come. However, it is important to note that the political landscape can change quickly. It is possible that the next administration will be more supportive of space exploration. In that case, there could be a renewed focus on a new moon mission. Only time will tell what the future holds for space exploration. Number 5. The absence of public interest. In recent times, public interest in a new moon mission has been on the low side, with only a small percentage of people believing that it is a worthwhile endeavor. This lack of interest is likely due to a number of factors, including the high cost of such a mission, the lack of clear benefits, and the perception that it is a waste of money. The cost of a new moon mission is estimated to be in the billions of dollars. This is a significant amount of money that could be used to address other pressing issues, such as climate change or poverty. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 37.9 million Americans, which is about 11.6% of the population, are considered to be poor. Poverty and economic insecurity are extremely prevalent and are as much a part of the American success story as victories in achieving the American dream. Most people wish that the huge amounts of money spent on space-related ventures should be used to eradicate poverty and even help the homeless. Additionally, there is no clear consensus on what the benefits of a new moon mission would be. People want to see something tangible come out of NASA explorations. Far above breaking records, people want what they can benefit from. Some argue that it would lead to scientific breakthroughs, while others believe that it would simply be a symbolic victory. Finally, many people perceive a new moon mission as a waste of money. Some people even argue that we should focus on solving problems here on Earth before we start exploring other planets. Despite these challenges, there are some who believe that a new moon mission is a worthwhile endeavor. They argue that it would be a major technological achievement and that it would inspire future generations to pursue scientific exploration. Additionally, they believe that it would have a number of practical benefits, such as developing new technologies that could be used to address climate change or improve healthcare. In summary, the decision of whether or not to pursue a new moon mission is a complex one, and the will of the people has a lot to do. Now it's time for the subscriber's pick. Can you take a look at this picture? This looks like the moon with a big round hole in it. Is this some kind of weird portal leading to another dimension, or is it just a hole in the moon? Let us know what your thoughts are on the first moon landing. Let's hear your thoughts in the comment section. Number 4. Battle and need for technological advancement. Victor Glover, a NASA astronaut, spent 2 months each in 2020 and 2021 on the International Space Station. He worked on technology demos that could be very important for upcoming lunar exploration when he was there. Advances in technology both in space and on Earth include robots, computers, health monitors, and life support systems. The Cold War, which saw the United States and the Soviet Union vying for world supremacy after World War II, altered the course of history, and the technology developed during the space race remains in use today. Beyond only causing international tension and conflict, the Cold War and the early space race gave rise to the present-day technological era. The early exploration of space was made possible by the ensuing advances in rocket technology, which allowed the Soviet Union to orbit the first artificial satellite successfully in 1957 and launch the first person into orbit in 1961. When the U.S. successfully set down the first astronauts on the moon in 1961, the rivalry reached its peak. The Apollo missions cautiously concentrated on the equatorial parts of the near side of the moon that receive plenty of sunlight, whereas Artemis missions will travel to more challenging regions near the moon's south pole. The suits need to be created for a daring new phase of lunar exploration, which is maybe most vital. Yes, a new moon mission would require the development of new technologies, such as a lunar lander and a new spacesuit design. Unfortunately, these technologies could be costly and time-consuming to develop. Some of the technical challenges that need to be addressed for a new moon mission include the lunar lander. A new lunar lander would need to be developed that can safely land on the the moon and take off again. This would require the development of new technologies, such as a new propulsion system and landing gear. Another is the spacesuit design. A new spacesuit design would need to be developed that can protect astronauts from the harsh environment of the moon. This would require the development of new materials and technologies, such as radiation shielding and thermal protection. Also, there is the need for a propulsion system. A new propulsion system would need to be developed that can accelerate astronauts to the moon and back. This would require the development of new technologies, such as new rocket engines and fuel systems. Next is the power system. A new power system would need to be developed that can provide enough power for astronauts on the moon. This would require the development of new technologies, such as new solar panels and batteries. Lastly, a life support system. A new life support system would need to be developed that can provide astronauts with the oxygen, water, and food they need to survive on the moon. This would require the development of new technologies, such as new filtration systems and recycling systems. These are just some of the technical challenges that need to be addressed for a new moon mission. It is likely that other challenges will be identified as the project progresses. Number 3, the scientific value. The moon is a fascinating place, and it still holds scientific value. However, there are other destinations, such as Mars, that are seen as more scientifically interesting or important. Mars has a number of advantages over the moon as a destination for scientific exploration. It has a thicker atmosphere, which would provide more protection from radiation and other hazards. It also has a more Earth-like surface, with evidence of water and past volcanic activity. This means that there is a greater chance of finding evidence of life on Mars. The moon is still a valuable destination for scientific research, but it is likely that Mars will eventually take its place as the primary focus of human space exploration. The moon is a scientifically valuable destination because it is the closest celestial body to Earth and provides a unique opportunity to study the effects of space on living organisms. The moon also has a number of resources that could be used to support human exploration, such as water ice and helium-3. However, Mars is seen as a more scientifically interesting and important destination because it is more similar to Earth and may have once been habitable. Mars also has a number of resources that could be used to support human exploration, such as water ice and carbon dioxide. Therefore, the decision of which destination is more scientifically valuable will depend on the specific goals of the mission. Number 2, NASA has other priorities. NASA has many other priorities and goals, such as studying Earth's climate and conducting research in low Earth orbit, which may compete for resources and attention with a moon mission. One of NASA's top priorities is studying climate change. The agency has a number of satellites and other instruments in orbit that are collecting data on the Earth's atmosphere, oceans, and land surface. This data is used to track changes in the Earth's climate and to develop models that predict future changes. NASA is also working on developing technologies to help reduce greenhouse gas emissions and to mitigate the effects of climate change. For example, the agency is developing solar and wind power technologies, as well as carbon capture and storage technologies. NASA is also conducting a lot of research in low Earth orbit. The agency has the International Space Station, ISS, in orbit, which is a unique laboratory for conducting scientific experiments. The ISS is also a test bed for technologies that could be used for future missions to the Moon and Mars. Some of the research being conducted on the ISS includes studies of human health and the effects of long-term spaceflight, as well as experiments on materials, science, biology, and physics. NASA is planning to send astronauts back to the Moon by 2024. The agency is developing a new rocket and spacecraft for the mission called the Space Launch System, SLS, and Orion spacecraft. The Moon mission is a major undertaking, and it will require a lot of resources and attention. It is possible that the Moon mission will compete with other NASA priorities, such as climate change research and low Earth orbit research. NASA has many other priorities and goals, such as studying Earth's climate and conducting research in low Earth orbit, which may compete for resources and attention with a Moon mission. It is important to weigh the costs and benefits of each priority, and to make sure that NASA is using its resources in the most effective way possible. It is also important to remember that NASA is a multifaceted agency with a wide range of responsibilities. The agency cannot focus on just one priority, and it is important to strike a balance between all of its priorities. Number 1, lack of political will. Lack of political will is a major obstacle to Moon missions. Moon missions require substantial political support, and some presidents have not prioritized lunar exploration in in their space agendas. A president may like the idea of moon exploration personally. However, the needs of his political ambitions, elected officials, and also his followers may come in the way. This lack of support can be due to a variety of factors, including the high cost of moon missions, the perceived lack of scientific or economic benefits, and the potential for international conflict. Despite these challenges, there are a number of reasons why moon missions are important. Moon missions can help us to better understand the history of the solar system, the formation of the Earth, and the potential for life beyond Earth. They can also help us to develop new technologies that can be used to improve life on Earth, such as new materials, new medical treatments, and new ways to generate energy. In order to overcome the lack of political will, it is important to educate the public about the importance of moon missions and to build support for these missions among elected officials. It is also important to develop new technologies that can make moon missions more affordable and more beneficial to humanity. If a decision is made to send humans back to the moon, it will be important to take steps to mitigate the risks. This includes developing new technologies to protect astronauts from radiation and microgravity and improving safety procedures. It is also important to remember that there is no guarantee of success. Any spaceflight, including a mission to the moon, carries the risk of failure. However, the potential benefits of space exploration are great, and the risks can be mitigated. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.